I'm Thomas Collins. I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force in Vietnam. Although I was a fairly young man then when I went to Vietnam, I was, unlike so many Vietnam-era veterans, I was already a professional military officer, having risen to the rank of captain when I first went to Vietnam. My aircraft was the F-4C, the Phantom II jet, one of the main line fighter aircraft of the Air Force, in fact, the free world, even until the mid-1990s. So our mission in Vietnam during the air war, which was very often completely separate from the ground war in South Vietnam, was to stop the aggression of the North Vietnamese communists, and they're supplying the South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, and even sending mainline North Vietnam divisions to South Vietnam. So in 1965, when I was flying my missions, that was our primary mission. And one nice sunny October afternoon in 1965, I was flying what we called a road reconnaissance mission, simply trying to stop truck convoys or any other activity of troop movement going down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Route 1 in Vietnam, which we call Ho Chi Minh Trail. And at my flight, I was the element leader, or number 3, in the flight of 4 Phantoms. Had chosen a target of opportunity, which happened to be a road bridge still standing. Number 1 and number 2 aircraft attacked the bridge and did not knock it out. So I, being number 3, rolled in, announcing to everyone that I would show them how to bomb a bridge. Well, I never pulled out of that bomb dive. The Golden BB, some North Vietnamese gunner, sitting on a hilltop, which I flew over, sent the Golden BB right into the old Phantom, and right at the most critical time it flipped upside down. I still was not releasing all of my armament, which I had to immediately, and was able to leave the Phantom just before it impacted with the ground. My parachute partially open, I drifted back through my own bomb smoke and hit the ground with a back-injuring thud. I was paralyzed, perhaps even out for a few minutes, but knowing when I did regain my senses that I was laying in the bottom of the valley between quite a few villages, hidden only by some elephant grass, with a colored parachute canopy over top of me. My back was so injured I could not stand up, but I got the canopy down out of the bushes and started crawling through the grass. I was surrounded almost immediately, however, from all directions, and captured there in that valley in North Vietnam. So my life changed dramatically from being a world-traveled Air Force fighter pilot to suddenly being reduced to almost a vegetable-like state there in a very strange part of the world, in a rice paddy. It took them about 2 weeks to transport me to Hanoi through villages. In some I was treated very well, and others I had to run the gauntlet. All of my possessions, my clothing were taken from me, of course, and some villages I felt like it was a lynch mob, and indeed it was. And other villages just simply wanted to help me get along the way with the militia guards that were carrying me. That was a strange 2 weeks, although I was to spend 7.5 years after that. And I've been often asked after returning home, how in the world you survived. Well, in many ways. I have many comments on that. One is, if I'd have known that October day of 1965 that I would still be there 7.5 years later, and if I'd had any clue as to what life would be like during that 7.5 years, I could not even predict what might have happened. I certainly might not be here today. But we learned right from the beginning to take things minute by minute, then hour by hour, day by day, month by month. So the first 2 weeks, the 2 weeks it took to get me to Hanoi were the longest 2 weeks of my life. Many, many experiences. We were attacked by our own aircraft. We always traveled then and throughout the 7 years I was there, only at night, only tightly shackled, only blindfolded, and well guarded. Very often on foot, but sometimes by a military vehicle. Sometimes that had its hazards. I was, as I just described, bound, shackled, blindfolded, and my truck fell off a pontoon bridge into the middle of a river one night. Of course, I'd learned how to get my bonds loosened and my blindfold loosened, so as soon as we hit the water, I managed to get myself free underwater and get out. Of course, they were trying to save me. So that it has its hazards, being pulled through the countryside of a backward country like that as a prisoner that they're desperate to keep. On the way to Hanoi in that 2 weeks, we went through a village what I and others call a halfway house. That's where we were first interrogated seriously, where we were first tortured brutally, and met the first English-speaking professional interrogators, those who were captured in that part of North Vietnam. I spent about 3 days there. One of the strangest feelings of my whole life was arriving one cold night after having made several unsuccessful escape attempts back along the road in the city of Hanoi, pulling up, again blindfolded, but being able to peek out from underneath and observe what was going on. That truck stopped in front of a formidable, huge concrete stone mass, which was Hoa Lo Prison, right in downtown Hanoi. It was a prison we would later name the Hanoi Hilton. It was a huge complex. It had many facets, many annexes, which we all named by some English or an American name. The great gates, steel gates came open, and I was very rudely shoved inside, and those great iron gates slammed shut with a never forgettable thud. And the strange thing is, that was some great relief to be safe from the torture, from being drugged through the countryside, and all of the dangers I'd faced in only that short 2 weeks prior to that. It was a very strange feeling. Life in the Hanoi Hilton was, first of all, very secretive. The one thing the enemy tried to do to us was keep us isolated. I spent my first 10 months in solitary confinement, prohibited by the regulations and under great threat of torture, beatings, and you name it, from communicating with any other American. I was not even to know that I was in the presence of any other American. But we soon discovered that this was not true, and soon discovered that communication was the vital link that would save our lives, because only through communication with other Americans could we remember our code of conduct, could we remain unified. The old saying is, divide and conquer is certainly true, and unity was certainly our key to survival. So communication was a key link to that. The enemy knew that. The communists knew that. So the primary thing they tried to stop us from doing, if nothing else, whether they could re-educate us, brainwash us, or anything else, the most important thing was to prevent us from communicating with the other Americans, because they knew that gave them the advantage. So I spent over 7 years fighting that battle of communicating, and we did a pretty good job of it. Many people may recall from hearing of the Vietnam War from other sources, a innovative little thing that I guess only Americans could devise. It was so simple, as Americans so often do, but also effective. It was called a POW tap code, simply putting the alphabet into a matrix of 5 rows and 5 columns, and then anything that made a sound, like knuckles on a concrete stone wall, a tin cup beating on a floor, a hack, a cough, a spit, or simply anything that made sound. The sweeping, anything that made a sound could transmit this code, unlike Morse code, which required a very sophisticated, almost, system to transmit it. So that's how we lived for over 7 years, communicating with each other through stone walls, from camp to camp, from room to room, by using this tap code. Life was very harsh, even during the good times. Our diet was rice, pumpkin soup, things which grow in the tropical Vietnam. Occasionally we'd have fish heads. The diet was at first inadequate. I had beriberi, weighed only about 90 pounds by 1968, and practically died. Some guys who came in and saw me, who were shot down at that time, thought I was very near death. I didn't know it, but perhaps I was, from beriberi. But I recovered from that. The diet became better, and by the end of the war in 1973, I was back in pretty good shape. In early 1973, the trucks rumbled up the Mountain Valley Road that night, and the next night, still blindfolded, still in secrecy, still under the cover of darkness, we loaded the trucks, and the convoy started south. So we knew, that's how we knew we were coming home. And back in the Hanoi Hilton, those last few months, we were fed well, clothed, prepared to go face the world. Project Homecoming, which is the United States military's effort to return the prisoners in Hanoi, was, of course, the greatest thrill of my life, where they flew the C-141s into Hanoi, Gia Lam Airport, which was not even serviceable because it had been so damaged by the war, but somehow the runway had been prepared well enough to get the 141s in early 1973, February the 12th to be exact in my case, and I was taken to the airport and with some little ceremony turned over to the American authorities to fly home. Greatest day of my life. Thank you, fellow Americans, and God always bless America.